Chapter 16 Xie Qingrong Gets Her Just Desserts. Xie Qingrong's face blanched. She knew what the third young mistress of the Shu house was like. There was no way she would let her son marry Xu Qing. She cried out, "No!" Xu Qing was furious. "No? Then give the gifts back!" Xu Qing understood what was happening, that Xiao Wan was in fact manipulating the situation. It was obvious Xiao Wan would make her life difficult if she continued to pursue Xie Chuchen's marriage contract. Therefore, wouldn't it be more advantageous to sell Xiao Wan this favor and just go along with the plan? She would either gain a replacement husband or be compensated for the broken marriage contract. Xie Qingrong dared to damage her reputation and speak rudely to her in public. Not to mention, there was the ruined marriage. Xie Qingrong needed to pay for both. Xu Qing angrily went on.
Xie Qingrong, you say you want to withdraw from the contract, and just now you were yelling loudly about how you would pay it off, so that means you should have the funds. Or were you just playing at being a grand rich madam?
Xu Qing turned to address the officials watching. Respected officials, the Xie house secretly broke a marriage contract, then refused to return the gifts. I suspect they are attempting to defraud me. I request respected officials take Xie Qingrong into custody and interrogate her rigorously. It is only fair and just. Xiao Wan nodded with a sad expression on her face. Indeed, Xu Qing does deserve justice. Today should have been a joyful day where she would have brought a husband home. That things would turn out this way, she must feel so wronged. She gave the gathered officials a hold-fist salute. Respected officials, do not consider my connection to the Xie house. Please, handle the situation with impartiality.
Xiao Wan, this is all you're doing.
Xie Qingrong knew Xiao Wan was exacerbating the situation on purpose. She barely got a few words in before Xiao Wan's polite facade dropped and her true colors showed through. What reason do you have to accuse me, Mrs. Xie? The matchmaker can testify. You signed the contract. The only ones to handle it were you and the matchmaker, so how could anyone have tampered with it? Xiao Wan spread her hands out innocently. I myself only learned of this marriage today. How could I have moved fast enough to set you up? You! Xie Qingrong pointed a finger at Xiao Wan, but was unable to argue back. If you want to avoid punishment for not paying the penalty, then you'll have to give your son to the Shu house, Mrs. Xie. Do you believe he will be mistreated? Have you changed your mind about the marriage? Knowing you couldn't pay the penalty, yet to still so publicly renege on the contract, one must wonder if you are trying to swindle the third young mistress. Indeed, if this is the case, then the punishment is 60 strikes of the board. Xiao Wan shot the officials a glance before stepping forward. She looked up at the sky, then brushed Xie Qingrong's hand away. Properly think over your options, Mrs. Xie. The way I see it, you have 3 choices. 1. Keep your son by paying the penalty for reneging on the contract. 2. Keep your son and accept the 60 strikes in lieu of immediate payment, and simply pay once you've accumulated the funds. Or 3. Give your son to the Shu house and avoid suffering the consequences. Now, it is late, and the contract does not concern Xie Chuchen. This newlywed young lady is very busy. Furthermore, father-in-law needs to return to the Xiao house. Addressing the officials, Xiao Wan said, Sirs, I leave the matter of this engagement to your discretion. The officials were no fools. With pressure from both Xiao Wan and Xu Qing, both of whom were spoiled rich children of powerful houses, they knew what they needed to do. At this point, Xie Qingrong was howling in grief, her anger apparent. The official stepped forward and grabbed her without mercy. Afraid they would drag her along with her mother, Xie Xi had run and hid in a corner. She was visibly pale from fright. Meanwhile, Xu Qing had aggressively pulled Xie Chen to her side. Xie Chen's once beautiful face was now a blotchy mess of smeared powder. Xiao Wan looked at the chaos with a tiny smile on her lips. The Xie house was finally getting their just desserts. She had felt suffocated from the moment she saw them bullying Xie Chuchen, but now she could finally breathe. Looking around, she saw Xie Chuchen also hiding in a corner. He looked fresh and elegant, like a pure, unsullied flower peeking out of the ground. The image created ripples of clarity and warmth in her heart. Looking at its clear eyes and unadorned face made her own eyes gentle. She stepped forward and extended her hand out to him. Chuchen, have you packed? Why are you sitting in the corner like that? Let's go home. Chuchen thought, home? The day had turned quiet after the hustle and bustle died down. He stared blankly at her extended hand. There, in front of him, were the same smooth, slender fingers he remembered from 3 years ago, when he stood desperate and hopeless in a dark corner. They were the same ones that pulled him out of the cold and brought him back into the warmth. He couldn't resist looking up at her. She stood reflected in his eyes, bathed in warm sunlight. It was as if the warmth from the glow was flowing out and wrapping him up in a cocoon. A soft breeze blew her scent to him. It was a sweet scent that tickled, and though light and barely perceptible, managed to sneak through the wall surrounding his heart. With a plop plop, the bricks came crashing down, one after the other. Panic lingered in his eyes for a long time. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't decipher Xiao Wan's expression. Her inscrutable look, combined with a fresh, unpowdered face, gave her a glow like freshly fallen snow. He held a hand to his chest in worry. Was he sick? Was there something wrong with his heart? It was doing all kinds of strange things today. Though his heart was restless and his mood in turmoil, he couldn't help but stupidly grin the entire trip back, as he sat against Xiao Wan's side. Earlier, Xiao Wan had taken Xie Chuchen's hand and led him to the carriage. She and Xie Chuchen sat atop outside, while Zhao-er, Shen Shi, Shen Shi's 2 servants, Yunya and Huà Xià, crammed themselves inside the carriage. Xiao Wan had never driven in her life, but she still snatched the reins away from Huà Xià, intent on doing the driving herself. Her mood was especially good as she brandished the whip to command the horses home. Those on the street saw Xiao Wan personally driving the carriage. They knew she had just wed Xie Shumo, so today had to be the groom's return home. To think she would escort him there and back, and then to even lower herself to personally drive the carriage. Xiao Wan was indeed, just as the rumors said, completely head over heels for Xie Shumo. To the side, Huà Xià's face was completely white. The entire ride had her heart thumping in fear. She was afraid her young mistress would crash and there would be a terrible accident. She looked at Yunya, the question clear in her eyes. What's going on? Is our young mistress possessed? Yunya thought about it. She had been mulling the same thing for the past 2 days, but had failed to find an answer. Xiao Wan had a smile on her face as she said, Chuchen, we're home. She opened the side door, then turned around to help Xie Chuchen off the carriage. The sight of him holding his chest and biting his lip made her pause. It was obvious he didn't want to dismount. It immediately made Xiao Wan worry. She leaned in closer and asked, What's wrong? Are you uncomfortable anywhere? It wasn't until they reached home that Xiao Wan realized she didn't have to bring Xie Chuchen and his father to the estate. She could have just as easily worked on healing Shen Shi's eyes and protected both men by putting them in a cottage off the estate. But she wanted to make up for her wrongs, so she decided to properly receive Xie Chuchen. Plus, she was uneasy if he wasn't nearby. Xie Chuchen looked down at her nervously.
It'll create a misunderstanding if main husband Ji sees me entering through the front entrance. I can go through one of the side doors. Thank you, Miss Xiao, for taking care of me so far.
What he really wanted to say, what he really wanted to call her, was wife. But he was afraid of the consequences, so he endured and spoke what was proper. Xie Chuchen barely finished speaking when Xiao Wan lifted him up out of the carriage. His panic-stricken face reminded her of last night when he asked her to hold him. Her expression softened and a tiny smile crept onto her lips. She said, He's not here, and your leg is injured. It's a long walk to the side door, so why not use the main entrance? Xie Chuchen sucked in a breath of alarm.
Young Master Ji is not returned. Did you quarrel because of me? I'm sorry,
It's not a big deal. He's just feeling homesick, so he's staying at his maternal home for a few more days. Xiao Wan was afraid Xie Shumo would attack Xie Chuchen upon returning, so she quickly added, When he comes home, make sure you don't say anything to him. Stay far away from him, understand? Xie Chuchen nodded as he bitterly said, I know. I will make sure young Master Ji does not see me. He thought Xiao Wan didn't want him to get in the way of her relationship. Xie Chuchen was unwilling, even when faced with the undeniable truth. I really am a stingy, greedy person, he thought. He couldn't help but despise his own pettiness.
Eldest young mistress, main husband Xi, welcome back.
The guards at the entrance gave their greetings as soon as they saw Xiao Wan walking forward with a young man in her arms. After all, who else would be in her embrace other than Xie Shumo? It wasn't until Xiao Wan approached closer that the guards realized their mistake. They froze in astonishment at the sight of their young mistress holding Xie Chuchen. Xie Chuchen wanted to relish their closeness longer, but he knew better. He twisted, trying to get out of her embrace. It was audacious enough that he, as a minor husband, entered through the main entrance so brazenly. He didn't dare let anyone see Xiao Wan holding him. Instead of releasing him, Xiao Wan slapped him lightly on the butt and admonished him, "Stop flailing like that." Xie Chuchen's face reddened. He was too scared to escape, but he tried his best to make himself as small as possible. He hunched his neck to his shoulders and pressed his face against her chest. Instead of minimizing his existence and making him invisible, it only served to make it harder for Xiao Wan to ignore him. Who would have guessed that Xie Chuchen would snuggle in her arms so intimately? Xiao Wan could barely restrain her urges. People stared at them as though they were lovers walking home. Yesterday, young mistress left with main husband Ji, but today young mistress is returning home with someone else. It must be that seducer. He sneered our young mistress. But where is main husband Ji? Main husband Ji? It doesn't look like he returned yet. Hey, the young mistress, she didn't discard him in a careless fit, did she? Look, she even brought that gimp back. The servants were furiously gossiping. They were whispering so much that Xiao Wan became annoyed. Her brow furrowed and she shouted, "Did the Xiao house raise animals? Instead of gossiping about the master, how about you lot get to work? Next one who talks gets kicked out." Xiao Wan had always been a little tyrant, so everyone became fearful when she yelled. They immediately hushed and lowered their heads. They would bide their time and wait for her to leave before gossiping. Xiao Yirang got wind of everything the moment she returned home later that day. Rumors were swirling all over the place, but they all ran along the same lines, and that was Xiao Wan had had a fight with Ji Shumo, and she was now drooling over a new boy toy. Xiao Yirang promptly summoned Xiao Wan for a talk. The courtyard given to Xie Chuchen wasn't like the one from the previous life. This time he was placed in Plum Court. It was separated from Xiao Wan's courtyard by a meandering brook that showcased an exquisite pavilion in the center. The distance between the two could be crossed in the time it took to burn 2 incenses, and if one was quick, in half that time. It was not so far that it would be considered remote, but it was also not so close that it would be considered near. Plum Court was perfect for recovering patients because of its quietude and scenic nature. Although it was a bit of a walk, Xiao Wan could still see the lights from her own windows. She had originally wanted to place Xie Chuchen in a closer courtyard, but she was afraid Ji Shumo would bully him. She couldn't bear to put a soft, gentle sheep like Xie Chuchen in front of a malicious wolf like Ji Shumo. Xie Chuchen had minimal luggage, just a few changes in clothes, some daily necessities, and a picture scroll. It was the same one she saw that day she visited his courtyard. He had refused to let her handle it and had even securely bound it inside a bag, which he then hid out of the way in a corner of the bed. It was clear how happy he was. His secretiveness only made her curious. Who painted it, and why was it so important to him? Could he really not sleep unless he was clutching it to his chest in bed? In the end, it did make Xiao Wan just a wee jealous. She had just finished settling everyone in when she received the angry summons from her mother. "Wan Nier, what is going on here? Why isn't Shumo with you?" Xiao Yirang angrily smacked the table as she spoke.
Did you abandon him and return home alone? Is it really possible you don't know the proper etiquette for the visit?
Never mind the owner of the pendant. In Xiao Yirang's mind, Ji Shumo was Xiao Wan's main husband. It was only the second day of marriage, and Xiao Wan was already favoring someone else. If true, then wasn't her daughter just returning back to her dissolute ways? Xiao Yirang was a kind-hearted person, so she couldn't bear to repeat her words again. Had this been the past, knowing her eldest daughter's temperament, Xiao Yirang knew Xiao Wan would have launched into a fit, and that would have been that. Her hands were tied when it came to her eldest daughter. Surprisingly, this wasn't the case today. Instead, Xiao Wan leaned into her mother. "Mother, it wasn't that I abandoned Shumo. It was that Shumo refused to return." Both women had been busy yesterday. Xiao Yirang had been drinking to her newfound happiness, to the fact that her eldest daughter was finally settling down, and Xiao Wan had been busy selling Xie Chuchen's affairs. And that morning, Xiao Yirang had slept in, so neither woman had had the time to chat. There were so many things Xiao Wan wanted to say to her mother, but she didn't know where to start. In the end, she decided to begin with Shumo's home visit. Eldest sister was interested in a position in the Ministry of Public Works. So Shumo wanted me to talk to mother about it and get her the position. And for second sister, he wanted me to give her money so she could open the new branch, but I rejected both things. After Xiao Wan recounted everything that happened with Ji Shumo, she told her mother her reasoning. "I mean, it's true, mother is good friends with the head of Ministry of Public Works, but I don't think it's a good idea for mother to be involved in this matter. So I tactfully refused to lobby on eldest sister's behalf. If it's known she gained employment through personal connections, then people may gossip and start pointing fingers later on. It could adversely affect mother's reputation, so I encouraged her to take the imperial examinations and get the position using her own abilities. As for the store, I had already spent a significant amount of my own personal savings on the wedding celebrations, so I proposed they wait to open a new branch. Shumo misunderstood and accused me of not being helpful. It was strained between us. So then he refused to return home with me. It's bad luck to leave a newlywed's home empty the first month of marriage, so I told Shumo he could come home when he felt appropriately inclined. I bade him goodbye, and I returned home." Xiao Yirang was pleasantly surprised at Xiao Wan's personal growth. She knew Shumo was Xiao Wan's #1 priority, so it was amazing she considered her reputation in refusing Shumo's requests. After carefully studying Xiao Wan, unusual as it was, she concluded that the person in front of her was indeed the same girl who was once foolishly in love with Shumo. Xiao Wan bowed her head and spoke in an innocent voice. "Honorable Mother, were my actions incorrect?